Since then, the French maker has come up with many big sellers and some more niche models that have gone on to define entire sectors of the automotive world. This makes Peugeot one of the most important and intriguing car companies, so here are their greatest hits. The Type 1 is the seed from which Peugeot's car-building empire grew. It was manufactured in conjunction with Leon Serpollet, and was a steam-powered tricycle, which was a common formula for the time when petrol engines had yet to become a dominant force. The two-cylinder engine was efficient, but the body was much more horseless carriage than car, and the Type 1 was superseded by the Type 2 in 1890. This is where it all started to come together for the Peugeot family where their car-building business was concerned. Only 64 Type 3s were ever made, but it founded the firm's reputation for reliability and robust construction. That was partly due to a Daimler-designed 565cc V-twin engine, but also because the Type 3 was used to ferry race officials in the first-ever Paris-Brest-Paris cycle race that gained it huge exposure to a French public only just waking up to the arrival of cars on the road. By the standard of the time, this Edwardian machine was a runaway sales success with a total of 276 finding buyers. An 8-horsepower flat-twin engine powered this model, and its engineering impressed Charles Rolls sufficiently for him to import it to the UK before he went on to found his eponymous company with Henry Royce. The original Bébé of 1904 tapped into the emerging market for cycle cars in France, which were very lightweight machines that were only a step up from a motorcycle. However, in 1912, Ettore Bugatti designed the BP1 Bébé that was much smaller car than cycle car. An 855cc 4-cylinder engine offered decent performance for the era, and Bugatti's own versions used a 4-speed manual gearbox, whereas Peugeot stuck with 2 and then 3-speed transmissions. There was some motorsport success for this model, and it was also the first Peugeot to sell more than 3,000 units. Like the Austin 7 in the UK, Peugeot recognized the need for affordable, reliable transport in the post-World War I era. The Type 161 Quadrolet was its answer, and it used a 667cc 4-pot motor to manipulate France's car tax system to its advantage, as it was classed as a cycle car. However, the Quadrolet grew into the Type 172 with comfortable seating for two abreast, and there was even a Grand Sport version with a giddy 720cc side-valve engine that contributed to a total of more than 12,000 being sold. The 201 was the first Peugeot to adopt the company's now familiar 3-digit naming policy. It followed the example set by its Quadrolet predecessor by offering an affordable way into car ownership during a period of financial hardship. The engine started as a 1,122cc unit with 23 horsepower and steadily grew in size to its eventual 1,465cc when production ended in 1937. For 1931, Peugeot introduced independent front suspension and claimed the 201 was the first mass-production car to feature this setup. You may think the 206cc was the first Peugeot with a retractable hardtop, but the 1936 Eclipse proves there's little new under the sun. Based on the standard wheelbase 402 family saloon, which itself was distinguished by modish airflow styling inspired by period Chrysler designs, the Eclipse's roof slid under its rear deck electrically. It was very expensive and strictly a two-seater, as so much space was given over to stowing the roof. The 302 borrowed heavily from its larger 402 sibling for its platform, engines and the daring streamlined styling. Distinctive twin headlights were placed close together behind the radiator grille to give this range of saloons, coupes and cabriolets a raffish air. Although it was in production for barely 2 years, the 302 sold well and more than 25,000 found homes. It helped the car was praised for its performance and handling, making it an early relative of the GTI dynasty that was to follow. This sublime styling of these coupe and cabriolet models was courtesy of Parisian Peugeot dealer Émile Dalmat. He constructed the bodies on a 302 chassis but with a 402 engine to give greater performance to justify the looks and price. His plan worked when 3 Dalmat Peugeots completed the 1937 Le Mans race in the top 10. Another of his cars went on to set a new record average speed of 87 miles per hour for 24 hours at the Monterey circuit. The styling of the 203 may have paid homage to the emerging products of the USA at the time, but the 203's technical specification was clearly all Peugeot. Independent front suspension was joined by hydraulic brakes and rack and pinion steering to give the 203 a ride and handling balance few could match at launch 12 years later when the model went out of production. The 1,290cc four-cylinder engine came with an advanced alloy head to give 45 bhp and strong performance. A total of 686,628 were sold and many found success in rallying and racing. The 403 is a testament to the success of its predecessor, the 203, as much of this car's running gear was carried over from the older model unchanged. However, all-enveloping styling from Pininfarina made it more aspirational and there was a choice of saloon or estate. The wagon could also be had as a familiale version with 3 rows of seats to offer MPV-like versatility 30 years before Renault though of its success. If you detect a similarity to Austin and Morris saloons of the same time, that's because the 404 was also styled by Pininfarina. Yet, the 404 was a much more sophisticated machine than its British rivals thanks to better steering and disc brakes on later models. There was even the option of a 96 bhp engine with fuel injection from 1965, as well as diesel units that were popular on the continent and in North Africa. During a long life that lasted until 1975, Peugeot sold 2.75 million 404s. These sleek coupe and soft-top models shared their chassis, engines and suspension with a saloon 404, but the bodywork was unique. Not a single panel was shared with a mainstream four-door as Pininfarina was given a blank sheet to style this pair. The results drew much admiration and they were practical too as the saloon's wheelbase was retained to make both coupe and convertible models full four-seaters. The 204 saloon offered comfortable, fuss-free motoring, but it took the coupe and cabriolet models to bring some much-needed glamour to Peugeot's small car lineup. Not as sporting as a contemporary MG or Triumph two-seater, the French cars majored on comfort and fine handling due to their supple suspension. The 304 was a more grown-up option than its 204 sibling and had styling inspired by its 504 big brother. This made it a good-looking car as the 1970s dawned and Peugeot maximized its appeal by selling it in saloon, estate, coupe and cabriolet forms. All used the same 1,288cc petrol engine in most markets, though there was also a plodding diesel that was popular in France. Much more interesting was the 304S with a 69 bhp engine that was added to the range in 1973. The 504 was a thoroughly modern machine when launched in 1969 and it lasted in production until 1982 when almost 3 million had been sold. Many of these went on to former French colonies with poor road surfaces and the 504 excelled at soaking up everything they could dole out, often going where even 4x4s would struggle. Handsome as a saloon, vast in estate form pictured, this Peugeot is as endearing as it's enduring. Back in 2012, our Steve Cropley met with a gent who still drives his Australian-built, as it happens, 504, with over 1 million kilometre on the clock, 625,000 miles. Where the 504 saloon was as solid and simple as the Eiffel Tower, the coupe and cabriolet models marked a return to Peugeot's collaboration with Pininfarina. Only 8,000 drop-tops were made, and 3 times as many coupes, but this car raised the profile of Peugeot way beyond those small numbers suggest. The reliable 2.0-litre from the saloon did service in most, but if you were after the ultimate there was a V6 engine that was the result of a joint venture with Renault and Volvo. In many ways, the 104 was an obvious car from Peugeot to fulfill the need for cheap transport at the bottom end of the market. However, that didn't stop the French firm from a bit of innovating, so its all-alloy engine was angled back at 72 degrees to lower the center of gravity. It resulted in good handling and a cushy ride. Perhaps not as radical as the Ford Fiesta 1976, the 104 lasted in production until 1988, so it certainly got the basics spot on. And yes, you're right, the Peugeot press office folk at the time sure loved their horses. Peugeot's answer to the Ford Cortina was far from groundbreaking in many ways, yet it also predicted the neat front-wheel drive layout that took its biggest rival until the 1993 Mondeo to adopt. It was comfortable, handled neatly and the 1.3 and 1.5-litre petrol engines did a good job of pulling the 305's meager 940 kilograms weight along. So, in many ways the 305 was a car ahead of its time. The 505 was Peugeot's last rear-wheel drive large saloon and it was a goodie. Superb build quality, plush suspension and strong engines made it capable of huge mileages even if servicing was neglectfully sporadic. There were strong diesel engines, as well as the massive estate and decently swift GTI versions, so it found favor in many parts of the world. This included Nigeria, where the 505 continued in production until 2006. Perhaps more than any other car it's built, the 205 has come to define Peugeot. Whether you chose the humble 954cc petrol model, the long-distance munching diesels or the hot hatch king GTI pictured, the 205 did it all. Suspension that could soak up battered roads, nimble handling and a spacious interior endeared it to almost 3 million buyers. It also took to the forest stages in T16 form during the height of rallying's Group B arms race and won that too. The 309 was the difficult second album to the 205's smash hit success. It may not have been as pretty as the smaller car, but this British-led design resulted in a fine small hatch that out-handled a Ford Escort and rode with much more compliance. It was also big inside and the GTI version was, arguably, the better hot hatch than the 205, with which it shared its suspension and engine. It wasn't going to take your breath away, but the 405 gave many car buyers plenty to think about when choosing their next mid-sized family car. It was neatly styled, again by Pininfarina, and was built in the UK at Brighton. The estate was generously proportioned and the diesel engines would lug along parsimoniously all day. For more verve, there was a four-wheel drive version and the Me 16 made for an interesting hot hatch alternative with its 160 bhp engine and 0 to 62 mph in 8.2 seconds. The 605 brought Peugeot's large cars kicking into the modern age with front-wheel drive and the option of turbodiesel power. It showed the French firm was evolving with the times and you could still have a V6-powered model if you wanted a bit of one-upmanship in the corporate car park. The finest hour for the 605 arrived with a 200 bhp 24-valve V6 that gave this understated executive a 145 miles per hour top end. If the 309 was the awkward big brother to the 205, the 106 was the chirpy smaller sibling looking to outdo it on every level. The 106 wasn't quite as big, but that was planned as the forthcoming 306 would solve that issue. Instead, the 106 excelled at delivering the fun and driving pleasure of the 205 in a cheaper package. There were also the GTI and bare-bones rally versions for those who craved even more entertainment. The 306 was the other bookend from the 106 that sealed the fate of the aging 205. As such, it had to be good to satisfy many happy customers and, thankfully, it was much better than merely decent. Regardless of which engine was under the bonnet, the 306 rewarded with fine performance and superb handling. The GTI 6 and UK-only rally versions pictured grabbed all the headlines, but the Cabriolet was a sleek looker and the 1.9 Turbo D was a credible diesel hot hatch. Peugeot didn't just up its mid-size game with the launch of the 406, it made every contender look dumpy and stayed in an instant. The perfectly balanced styling was complemented by a cosseting ride and agile handling, while the engines all worked well. Diesels proliferated, while the 3.0-litre V6 petrol came with 192 bhp muscle to take this saloon or estate to 142 miles per hour. In the end, 945,668 found willing homes. Just when we thought Peugeot had excelled themselves with the 406 saloon, along came the coupe to put our jaws back on the floor. The 3.0-litre V6 made for long-legged cruising and it could just about carry 4 people and luggage. Keen drivers preferred the 150 bhp 2.0-litre petrol as it made the turn-in and handling much crisper. It earned Peugeot 100,000 sales and 5-star rating from ourselves. It was both designed and built by Pininfarina. The 206 was a decent supermini, albeit with a dreadful driving position, but few cared about it when the CC arrived with its folding coupe cabriolet roof. For many, this model offered the glamour of a Mercedes SLK at a much more affordable price and it sold like hot croissants. The nominal 2 seats in the back even made it justifiable to those with kids. The 1007 earns its mention in this rundown of the greatest Peugeots not because of its driving manners or styling. Many would argue it was a great flop, but it strode out in its own direction with electric sliding side doors and easily folded seats to maximize cabin space. It was also one of the first small cars to earn a full 5-star rating in Euro NCAP crash tests, and it was the highest rated in its class thanks to 7 airbags as standard. Peugeot had lost its way on the driving front throughout the noughties. Then, with a great big splash of coupe glamour, the RCZ put that right. Low-slung and unashamedly a two-seater, the RCZ borrowed from the 207 for much of its running gear, but its setup was spot-on to deliver grippy, engaging handling. A RCZ-R version pitched up in 2014 with 247 bhp to see it from 0 to 62 miles per hour in 6.1 seconds, yet it could also provide 44.8 mpg. The Peugeot 308 got off to a flying start in life by scooping the European Car of the Year award just as it was launched. That sort of endorsement helps sales, but what really makes the 308 very worthy are its composed ride, refined cabin and space for occupants. It also gets Peugeot's cockpit design right, where the 208 doesn't quite click with its driver.